If you spent any time on this channel, you know I'm not super into the idea of rigid thinking around personality tests, personality traits, those sorts of things. This video is about masculinity and archetypes, and especially king, warrior, magician, lover. There's something really nice about these archetypes that I think is something that I've been feeling for a long time. This book has really given me the vocabulary to talk about these things in a better way. So this is all based on masculinity. What the authors of this book argue, because there are no more ritualistic traditions, oftentimes men try to fill that need for validation, for acceptance that they are a man in other ways. And so this often takes place in trying to get power in politics and trying to get power joining gangs, different ways that these manifest, not always in great ways, but without that ritualistic piece in place, a lot of us men end up searching for this validation in weird, sometimes self-destructive, not positive ways. It was interesting how I saw these in myself and then could see these play out in other people. So let's start with that first. Let's start with king. The king is centered, decisive, a man of integrity, a protector of his realm, and a provider. This is someone who is well balanced in terms of they know themselves. They're able to dip into the warrior, lover, magician energy, and they have this balance of those energies. They aren't so far into the deep end in one that they can't pull back out of it. And so talking with my friend about this, he made the point that he thought Will Smith was in his king energy. And I can totally see that. My defense that he was not in his king energy was recently when he slapped Chris Rock, because to me, that shows not a real sense of control of your emotions or your environment. And so to me, some of the most powerful, most badass, most dangerous guys I know through martial arts, boxing, Muay Thai, there's this sense of calm to them. They can be fun and have a good time, but there's this centeredness to them that you almost can feel it. It's this is why I'm so into stoicism, right? They can still be excited, but there's this sense of you aren't gonna knock them too far off that they're gonna make any brash decisions. And there is this piece to that, to me, that really shows a king. And I think in each of these archetypes, you have these kind of overall ideas to them, but then you also have your own perspective on them. And so for me, a couple examples of the king energy are Kevin Hart, Jay-Z, Kamaru Usman, Andrew Huberman, Tim Ferriss. There are certain traits among these guys is king energy, where they're kind of a master in their domain. They also have a good sense of humor. They are humble. They're ambitious guys. That's why I also like them. But they're able to ask questions. They're able to see themselves with some perspective. And that to me is a real sign, I think, of king energy. Being able to see yourself as a constant learner, to be curious. And this idea of like knowing that you don't know it all is like a true sign to me of a king, and being able to be humble, a guy that's kind of a blend of all these archetypes. This next one, I feel like I have a lot of this in me, and this is the warrior energy. These are things like focus, ambition, clarity, the ability to grind, put the hours in. A good warrior, I think, understands that life is short, time is fleeting, you want to make the most of it, your real clarity of vision. But I think where the warrior kind of starts to enter this shadow realm, and this is where I see it for myself, is when you start to become so focused on the mission that you lose connection with human touch. For me, this manifests in like a heterosexual way with women and my relation to them, of having a mission I'm so hell-bent on that I go one of two ways. I either go into like short-term, kind of these serial short-term relationships, because I'm so focused on the mission that I don't allow myself to fully open my heart. And at the same time, I also have this shadow side where I won't have any real emotionally or physically available. And I'll go so focused on the mission that I'll actually just have periods of complete celibacy, of just complete no interaction with women whatsoever. With friends, of course, but nothing sexual or romantic at all. Like extended periods. So focused and dialed in on the mission, I don't think that that's healthy either. The next archetype is the magician. The magician is the knower, the one with technical expertise and knowledge of all kinds. When I think of a magician, I think of the actual ability to do the thing, the skill. I also think of the magician as having a real ability to understand people and to empathize with people. I think for me, this manifests in kind of a negative way, in a shadow way, in terms of manipulation. Think about this with like The Game. Pickup artists, right? Trying to almost like manipulate women into sleeping with them. If I'm at the airport and I'm trying to like get my carry-on onto the plane, but it might be overweight, or I might have like one too many bags or something, like trying to like charm somebody into kind of getting something for personal gain, which is a beautiful thing to be able to know and to be able to do, but it can dip kind of into this more shadow energy than I like to admit. But I think my magician energy is often with this expertise around music and musical ideas or art, more creative things, this creative side to me, as well as this understanding of kind of what it means to be human and empathize and sympathy, being able to really feel for other people. Last but not least, of course, lover. Baby, that lover energy. I got a lot of lover in me. This is the one that is the sensual piece. This is the one where you're able to like stare at a beautiful sunset, to just kind of be curious, to be enamored with the world. That I feel like I've had a lot of lover in me for a long time. My mom would say, even as a kid, I would just sit in a basket. She would just put me in a basket and I would just sit there and just like look at the like wind blowing the leaves and look at the sunshine. And like, I still got a lot of that in me. This morning I was down at the beach and just like standing there and just like looking at the waves. Like for me as well, I think this plays into the sexuality, the sensuality with women for myself. And I think that there is a piece of being a good lover, a good partner, that plays into like that ultimate king energy. When you think about these other guys that I named, like this also has a shadow side I relate to a lot called the addicted lover. And this again comes into kind of these like short-term relationships with women where you're kind of chasing the novelty, the shorter relationships, rather than kind of going deep into one relationship. It's not necessarily sustainable for a long time. This is when I really have to keep in check, because to me, women are the most beautiful thing ever. Like actually my most inspiration for all the art I've ever made, probably. As much as I can go warrior energy and completely cut that out of my life, I can also go on the other end of the spectrum, and that can almost be completely consuming. This is another thing I loved about the lover energy. It says the lover is also a rebel. The man under the influence of the lover does not want to stop at socially created boundaries. He stands against the artificiality of such things. His life is often unconventional and messy. To me, I was like, bro, I like to do things my own way. If you see yourself in any of these things, that's a good sign. That means that you have the capability to do all these things. I think we all do, honestly. But I think at the same time, an important piece just to remember is that we're not perfect. Nobody is. Even these kings that I mentioned, I'm sure have their own struggles. To learn how to embrace the shadow, to be able to see the shadow for what it is, to be able to see yourself in these archetypes, have some language to say, I want to be more in my king energy, or man, I'm exhibiting a lot of warrior energy, for me has been really powerful. Just be able to recognize the good, the bad, and the ugly with all these things in myself as I'm still figuring out my masculinity. I'm still learning what it means to be a man, because I didn't get knighted, I never had that ritual. And so on my journey figuring this out, I found these have been a couple ideas that for me have been really powerful. Think about, okay, if I want to be a king, I want to be in my king energy, what do I need to do to get there?
Here's to the men with weathered skin and sweaty faces, who built cities with their bare hands, who sell sunglasses and cigarettes on street corners and know how to make $50 out of 10, who make your breakfast with the perfect eggs, metal spatulas scrape the skillet, wield kitchen knives like katanas, and go to war with the dinner rush every night at 7. Here's to the men who thought New York wasn't just for dreamers, speak English in broken accents, had never seen snow before, and learned how to make it work, who like gadgets and fix computers, speaking code like ancient tongues, treat math equations like they're riddles, tattoos faded on their arms. Here's to the men who read books and bedtime stories, look for monsters under dusty beds, check closets for the 3rd, 4th, 5th time because I saw it right before you got here. I promise. Here's to the men who drive your buses, cars, and taxis, prayer beads hanging from the rearview mirror, waiting for the old lady to cross the street and still make it home in time for dinner. Who fight your fires, do your plumbing, serve in wars, fix your cars, change bike chains and spark plugs, and treat engines like they're art. Who wave flags in days of glory and white ones in defeat. Examples I know many. I hope someday to be. Here's to the men.